Well, the clock is ticking closer and closer to the day where multiple Nintendo games will get wiped off the face of the earth. You can never be too safe with this type of stuff. Who knows what could happen after March 31st is over? Nothing! Literally nothing will happen!
Funnily enough, I originally didn't plan on making a video about these at all. I felt like there wasn't much to talk about. It would have just been me saying, Nintendo is bad and stupid because they don't keep game in store. But quite some time has passed since the news was broken about these limited titles, and people have had time to cool down and think, including myself. New information has also surfaced through interviews and news outlets about these releases, and this video today is basically going to be covering all that has gone down so far, what it means, and what may happen going forward. Let's talk about it. So, before I try to make sense out of why they are making these decisions, let's talk about what has actually gone down so far in terms of limited releases. Up until recently, limiting the releases of games wasn't really something Nintendo had been doing widely. There have been some scenarios when a game had its anniversary and a limited release collection of legacy games was released to celebrate, such as Kirby's Dream Collection for the 25th anniversary. And since it was only released physically, the production was limited for the duration of the anniversary. You may be saying something along the lines of, "That sounds like a limited release to me," and yes, it is a limited release. However, there is one thing different about these older anniversary collections that you need to consider. They are old. When these older collections were released, digital ownership of games was not nearly as widespread as it was today. Obviously, digital games are much cheaper to produce and distribute than physical games are, and since digital games weren't super popular back then, they were forced to produce physical copies of the game to distribute to retailers. This anniversary collection wasn't expected to pull as many sales as a brand new game would, so that's why the production was limited. If there was also a digital release, it would make sense to only pull the physical form production and keep the digital one available, since it won't cost any extra money. And in case you didn't already know, they did not end up doing this with later releases in a more digital era, but we'll talk about that later. However, these anniversary collections also had some cases where they didn't even get pulled from shelves. For example, Super Mario All-Stars, which was re-released on the Wii for Mario's 25th anniversary, was actually available indefinitely. There was an original limited edition of the game, which included a booklet detailing the history of the Mario franchise, and a golden audio CD that contained the soundtrack from multiple Mario games released over the years before. Eventually, they released another physical version in their Nintendo Selects line of games, which is a collection of first-party Nintendo games from previous consoles that are now marked down to a discounted price. The extra goodies with the limited edition were not included with that, but obviously that makes sense. Granted, the game was inherently an even worse celebration for an anniversary than 3D All-Stars was, since it was literally just a Super Nintendo version being emulated with no extra enhancements, but that's besides the point of this video. There is one single example that I could find of a limited release prior to 2020 involving first-party Nintendo games that was purely digital, but I may have missed some, so please correct me in the comments if I'm wrong. In September of 2011, The Legend of Zelda 4 Swords Anniversary Edition was released onto the eShop, but only for a limited time. This game was part of a celebration for Zelda's 25th anniversary and was available from September 2011 to February 2012 as a digital-only download as DSiWare, or on the brand new at the time 3DS eShop. Also, the game went the extra mile and added a new single-player mode, 2 new stages, and some remastered music and sound effects. But here's the thing that doesn't make me particularly mind this limited release. It was free. You could download this title at no charge and keep it forever, as long as you got it within that 5-month window. It's sad that there's no way to get access to it now if you didn't download it back then. That's still a negative regardless, but not as bad as what I'm about to mention. As soon as 2020 hit, we saw numerous cases of games being released only for a limited time. It felt like it was one after the other. First off, in June, Jump Rope Challenge was announced and released for the Switch. This game was very simple, maybe too simple. Granted, this game was also free like 4 Swords, but it's a part of the history, so I thought I'd mention it anyway. Jump Rope Challenge was originally created at the start of the Current World event, in order to give people an opportunity to exercise while they were stuck in their homes. At first, it was planned to only be available until September. However, since then, Nintendo has announced that they plan to keep the game available indefinitely due to unexpected popularity. So far, this game is an outlier. There has not been any other announcement of limited releases getting an extended stay. A few months after that, we were graced with the infamous Super Mario Bros. 35th Anniversary Direct. I'm sure all of you know that this one contained a couple offenders to the limited release crime. I do want to get one thing out of the way beforehand though. If you happen to be angry about the Super Mario Bros. Game & Watch system specifically being unavailable after March, I don't really understand your frustration with that. This specific product is very niche in nature and is intended to be a collector's item for super fans of Mario. The fact that they are limiting this of all things makes the most sense. With that out of the way though, it's time to mention the two other limited releases announced in that Direct. Super Mario Bros. 35 and Super Mario 3D All-Stars. Both of these games also go bye-bye after March, and they are making people quite a bit more angry. 3D All-Stars, for starters, is a collection of 3 widely beloved Mario games that was released both digitally and physically on September 18th, 2020. Both the physical and digital versions will no longer be available for purchase after that dreaded end of March deadline. And yes, once again, I do understand the physical release halting production in these scenarios. Cartridges especially cost a lot to produce, but the digital release too? There is no feasible explanation for that choice that doesn't lean very generously toward the realm of anti-consumerism. At best, it can be strung as a way for them to maximize sales of the product by creating artificial exclusivity for the game by giving it this shortened lifespan. At worst, you can twist these words into an even more negative manner and say that Nintendo is preying on our fear of missing out on this product in order to essentially trick people into buying it. But at least 3D All-Stars isn't as bad as the worst culprit of them all, Super Mario Bros. 35. This game was also released shortly after the 35th Anniversary Direct, and is a Mario-inspired take on the Battle Royale formula, available exclusively to Nintendo Switch Online members. This disappears on the same day as 3D All-Stars, but get this, you don't get to keep playing if you already downloaded it before the deadline. It's gone forever, never to be playable again. I really hope that they make the same decision that they did with Jump Rope Challenge and keep this available. I know many people who love the game, and it's also a great incentive for people to purchase an online membership. Because frankly, they don't have much to attract people to it other than the Virtual Console, which is pretty limited and gets updated very rarely. Oh, and the actual online play that comes with the paid online membership is one of the worst I've ever seen, but you already knew that, and I'm straying from my main point. And finally, there has been one more limited release as of the production of this video, and that is the localization of the first Fire Emblem game in the United States. This is the first time this game has ever been seen in English at all with the original Famicom graphics, and fans of the series were super excited to hear about its localization. There was even a collector's edition of the title released with tons of extras to go along with a digital download of the game to commemorate its 30th anniversary. This collector's edition, understandably, will only be available until March 31st, 2021. You know what else will only be available until March 31st, 2021? The digital download of the game on the eShop, because that just makes a ton of sense. Later in the year, numerous representatives, quote-unquote, responded to the frustration from fans with numerous quote-unquote statements on why they're limiting the releases of these games. Now, before I read these statements, I want to make sure that everyone goes into this with the right mindset. These statements that these certain people are making are in no way reflective of their morality or validity as an actual person. When you're a spokesperson or representative at any company, you may have to make some statements that you don't exactly agree with yourself, just because, well, you want to keep your job. So please, do not pin these statements on the person who delivered them, pin them on Nintendo's business as a whole. The first statement comes from Doug Bowser in an interview with Polygon in the middle of December, where he finally shares at least some sort of insight into their decision on limited releases. This is what he had to say when asked about the logic behind these limitations and deadlines. He responded saying, "I think I use a simple word, celebration. It's just, this is a celebration of Mario's 35th anniversary, and we wanted to celebrate in unique and different ways. And we've done that through games like Super Mario 3D All-Stars, or we will be doing that through future releases, such as Super Mario 3D World plus Bowser's Fury. It's not a strategy that we're going to be using widely, but it's one we thought was very unique for the actual anniversary. While this response explains the circumstances in which they plan to utilize the limited release windows, it doesn't exactly answer the question of why. Claiming that they made this choice because they want to celebrate the anniversary in unique and different ways just simply doesn't make sense.
What are you doing? I'm getting a bowl of cereal. What do you mean? Why don't you just pour it into the bowl? Oh, well, I thought that doing it this way would be unique and different. Get out of my house. Get out!
An unnamed spokesperson at Nintendo also responded to questions wondering why the Fire Emblem localization was also limited to the end of March. They responded with this. Fire Emblem Shadow Dragon and the Blade of Light is the first Fire Emblem game in the beloved franchise, which is celebrating its 30th anniversary through March 2021. We are excited to offer the game localized in English for the first time to commemorate the occasion. It's almost like this response was made with annoying the consumer in mind. Yes, I know that these spokespeople are simply going off a script given to them by members that are higher up at Nintendo, and I already addressed that we shouldn't be getting angry at these people themselves, but this response in particular just irks me. It just walks around the actual answer to the question and rephrases it as something completely different.
Hey, since this game is digital, it wouldn't hurt to just keep it on the shop for people that aren't able to get it before the deadline, right? We're excited to celebrate this game's anniversary by releasing this version onto the online store. The celebration lasts through March 31st. But why does it have to end on March 31st? We're excited
I hope you can understand people's frustrations with these limited releases now. That's all that's gone down so far, but it's almost inevitable that another limited release is going to come eventually. It's only a matter of time. With the whole story out of the way, let's talk about what this anti-consumer practice really means for us, and why we probably shouldn't just be shrugging it off, even if it hasn't directly affected you just yet. Artificially limiting products that aren't games isn't something that's new to Nintendo, or any game company for that matter, at least when it comes to merchandise and hardware. We've all seen plenty of cases where companies will release limited edition versions of their consoles or games in order to stir up hype and increase sales. The consoles would feature a design that is different from the generic version of the console, themed around a certain game or a new color scheme. These would usually be released for a short window of time to create exclusivity for the console design, specifically attracting collectors and mega fans of the game that may be featured on the console. Limited edition games, not to be confused with limited releases, are also common among game companies. These games usually include exclusive content or merchandise alongside the game itself to once again attract collectors or other people who may be interested in the extras added alongside the game. Both the limited edition games and systems usually aren't aimed towards the average consumer, and target more hardcore audiences. Like I said, Nintendo is no stranger to this, especially with consoles. According to ConsoleVariations.com, there are over 3,000 variations of Nintendo consoles known in existence as of the production of this video. However, this type of limitation is not inherently bad. In fact, I would say it's good. Limited edition consoles are very cool to own, especially if they are exceptionally rare. And the best part is, even if you don't have these special consoles, you can still play all the same games on your generic console. You are not restricted or barred from any enjoyment that the limited edition console owner would have, since the consoles are essentially the same aside from aesthetic looks. It's the same thing with games to a certain degree. If a game is considered limited edition, or any other name that developers want to give it to make it sound special, the extras included for buying it very rarely bar players from content in the game. If the extras for purchasing that edition are in the game at all, they are usually cosmetic or unrelated to the actual game. If the extras are not in the game, it's usually just a cool collector's item that a fan of the game would enjoy. On the other hand though, if you think about limited release games, the story completely shifts to a more negative connotation. Limited releases for games, by definition, involve releasing a game, shipping it to stores, and keeping it on the shelves for a much shorter period of time than a regular release would. There's no set time period that limited releases follow, but for example, Super Mario 3D All-Stars will only be available for purchase for a total of 6 months and 2 weeks. In comparison to regular releases, which are available to purchase for multiple years, these games have a pretty short lifespan. Now, there are a plethora of problems that arise when this model of selling the game is implemented, and as far as I could find, Nintendo has not done anything like this before, so why are they starting now? One of the biggest problems that arises amidst all of this is pretty obvious, and that is scalpers. For those who don't know what a scalper is, it's a person who buys up large quantities of a product that may be considered rare or in high demand, and then sells that same product at inflated prices. Scalpers buy so much product, in fact, that it ends up clearing the majority of the inventory, leaving very few units for non-scalping consumers to buy. Now, I'm not even going to try to get into the argument on whether scalping is okay or not. Is it legal? Yes. Is it morally acceptable? That can be debated pretty easily. However, you cannot deny that they make it very inconvenient for the average consumer when they go to buy the product and it's already gone out of stock in under an hour. Combining these scalpers with the fact that people only have a small time window to actually purchase these games due to the limited release creates a very bad recipe for disaster. Sometimes it could get so bad to the point where the person simply has to buy from the scalper at the extremely inflated price, just because they want to enjoy the game they were really excited for. But at that point, is it even really worth it? It's a very hard decision to make to support these types of people, especially since you're already dealing with the moral dilemma of supporting the company that imposed the limited release in the first place.
Man, I've been trying to get that new Zelda CDI game, but it's sold out everywhere.
Oh, no worries, dude. I got an extra copy that I can sell you.
Oh, sweet. That would be great. How much you asking? Like $70, $80? How about $6,000? What? Do you have any payment plans available?
And I'm not even taking digital limited releases into consideration yet. Scalpers can't really do anything with digital content, so this creates an even worse scenario for the consumer. Before, they still had the option to buy the game after the deadline for that increased price from the scalper, but in this case, they won't have the chance at all if they miss the cutoff date. Those people simply just won't get to play that game. This would be the case with the Fire Emblem localization. People who don't purchase it before the end of March simply just won't get to enjoy it, at least until Nintendo decides to potentially pull it out again. For a limited time, of course. Oh, and don't even get me started on the issue that arises with Super Mario Bros. 35. Since that game completely disappears off the face of the earth after that special little date, and it requires a Nintendo Switch Online membership to play, people in territories that aren't currently supported by Nintendo Switch Online will never even be able to play that game, and it's not even like they won't ever get support in their country anyway. Just recently, it was announced that the Nintendo Switch was coming to Brazil, a country that originally never had direct access to the console. To even better help illustrate the blatant anti-consumerism of this situation, let's create a hypothetical scenario here, and I won't even mention scalpers in it to prove that they are only a small part of the problem. So let's say I'm a person who was planning to buy a Nintendo Switch eventually, but was in no rush to do so. However, seeing the announcement of 3D All-Stars seals the deal on buying a Switch, considering I have a huge amount of nostalgia for the games in that collection. I then lose my job due to current world event. So, since I don't have a job, I can't afford to get a Switch for a while, as I'm struggling with other money-related things that are much more important. I think to myself, that's okay, I'll just buy a Switch in the game later, when my money situation is a bit more stable. But it's not okay. We all know it's not okay, and now hypothetical me can't enjoy their favorite games from their childhood. How sad is that? I could give you countless situations where this practice could create detrimental effects on the consumer, but I'm sure one was enough for you to get the point. No matter which way you put it, this method of selling a game has anything but the consumer in mind. But because of the amount of sales these titles are still pulling, I don't see Nintendo slowing down with this anytime soon. Speaking of times that are soon, what's next? How often can we expect limited releases in the future? Will it become mainstream with Nintendo products from now on? I highly doubt it. Doug Bowser even said himself that this practice is not something they plan to use widely going forward. I think it's safe to say that this practice is going to be reserved exclusively for anniversary celebrations based on all of Nintendo's responses to complaints. So that's at least some good news to hear if that turns out to be true. If they start limiting the availability of other games though, I'm going to be singing a much more different tune. And obviously, the anniversary celebration isn't the only reason they are opting for limited releases on these titles. In fact, I think claiming that it's for an anniversary celebration is simply used to put up a smokescreen over the actual reasons, which most can infer on their own. As I mentioned earlier, a big benefit for companies using the limited release model is the ability to manipulate consumers' fear of missing out. People who may have originally not planned on buying the game for a while can be persuaded into panic purchasing it to avoid missing the deadline. I would argue that this is slightly predatory in nature, especially for people that are more easily manipulated than others. The byproduct of preying on consumers in this way is obviously the spiking increase in sales from the panic purchasing. It's intended to give a game more sales than it originally would have pulled without a small release window, and in turn, obviously make the company more money. Funnily enough, the end of Nintendo's fiscal year is March 31st. For those who may not know, fiscal years are 12-month financial periods set by companies during their inception. At the end of each fiscal year, an annual financial statement is prepared in relation to the company that reports important statistics such as individual sales and profits. This obviously differs from a regular calendar year, as it sometimes may not end on December 31st, and is based on the nature of the company. Nintendo likely opted for a March 31st end date because it happens to be shortly after the holiday season has ended, which is likely the time of year where they make the most money. I'm sure you're beginning to see what's going on here. Nintendo already had a record-breaking year for sales, in large part due to Animal Crossing releasing during the Current World event. And they are pulling these limited releases from shelves on that specific date so that the total sales make it into the annual financial report for that fiscal year. You've got to keep in mind that Nintendo is a company that makes games, but they're also a company that needs to make money. So, at the end of the day, it's very obvious that this is also a huge factor in the slew of limited releases over the past year. They realized that it works so well with 3D All-Stars, did it with Fire Emblem, and at this rate, I'm sure they'll do it again pretty soon. This year is Zelda's 35th anniversary, after all. The Legend of Zelda Triforce Collection, featuring 3 classic Zelda games enhanced for the Nintendo Switch system. Available from April 1st to April 10th. Get yours before time runs out.